Hey everyone, this is Karenology. Buckle up because this story is absolutely outrageous. I woke up to find a security camera pointing directly into my bedroom window. It hadn't been there the night before. The lens gleamed under the early morning sun, a tiny red light blinking like a heartbeat. My stomach twisted into knots. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. I threw on a t-shirt and stormed outside, my pulse hammering in my ears. The camera was mounted high on the siding of my neighbor's house, angled perfectly toward my second-floor window. My gut told me exactly who had done it. Richard Mullins, 50 years old, balding, slightly overweight, and always watching. I had noticed him on my first day moving in, standing on his porch with that unsettling smirk, arms crossed like he owned the entire street. There was something about the way he looked at people, like he was cataloging them. I marched to his front door and knocked hard. The sound echoed through his house. Footsteps. The door opened a crack, then fully. Richard stood there, dressed in a faded polo and cargo shorts, sipping coffee from a mug that read, "World's Best Neighbor." His lips curled into a slow smile. "Morning, neighbor." I pointed at the camera. "What the hell is that?" He took a long sip of coffee, completely unbothered. "A security measure. You never know who might be lurking around." "Lurking? That's pointed directly at my bedroom. You can't do that." He tilted his head, feigning confusion. "Oh?" Didn't realize it was a problem. Just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. "Turn it away from my house," I said through gritted teeth. He exhaled dramatically, like I was exhausting him. "You sure you don't have anything to hide?" That stopped me cold. A deliberate, calculated jab. I squared my shoulders. "You've got 24 hours to move it, or I'm reporting you." His grin widened. "Go ahead." Something about his tone sent a shiver up my spine. I expected him to argue, maybe even threaten me. But no. He wanted this. He wanted me to react. I walked away, my skin crawling, his laughter trailing behind me. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blinking red light. I pulled the curtains shut, but it didn't matter. The knowledge that someone could be watching made my skin itch. By morning, I was done playing nice. I called the police. 2 officers arrived, one older with graying hair, the other younger, barely out of the academy. They listened as I explained the situation, nodding along as I pointed to the camera. The older cop adjusted his belt. "Legally, he's within his rights. If it's on his property and not recording inside your house, there's not much we can do." "You're kidding me." I ran a hand through my hair. "It's an invasion of privacy." The younger cop gave me a sympathetic look. "I get it, man. But technically, it's no different than a doorbell camera. Unless you have proof that he's actually recording inside your home, we can't force him to move it." I clenched my jaw. "So that's it?" The older officer gave me a look that said this conversation was over. "If anything escalates, give us a call." Escalates, like I was the problem. I watched them drive off, frustration burning in my chest. Richard stood on his porch, sipping his coffee, watching the entire exchange. He lifted his mug in a mock toast. That's when I realized what this was. A game. And I had just played right into it. By the next morning, there were 2 more cameras. One pointed at my backyard, the other at my driveway. Every inch of my home was now under surveillance, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. Then came the social media posts. Richard was good. Too good. His first post was just subtle enough. "Keeping an eye on things. Strange activity in the neighborhood lately. Stay safe, folks." Comments flooded in. Concerned neighbors chiming in, asking what he meant. His responses were carefully vague, just enough to plant the seed. "New guy next door seems a little on edge. Hope nothing's wrong." Then came the direct ones. "Saw some weird movement around my property last night. Be careful, everyone." The implication was clear. The new guy was trouble. By the end of the week, I was officially the neighborhood pariah. People who had smiled at me days before now averted their eyes. A woman crossing the street tightened her grip on her child's hand as she walked past my house. My mailbox started filling with anonymous neighborhood watch pamphlets about community safety. Then, the police came back. This time, it wasn't for my complaint. I opened the door to find two different officers, their expressions carefully neutral. "Sir, we've received a complaint about disturbing behavior." I let out a sharp laugh. "From who?" They didn't answer. "We just want to advise you to keep a low profile." Keep a low profile, like I was some kind of threat. I felt the walls closing in. Richard had won the first round. But I wasn't about to roll over and let him take me down. He thought he had control. He thought I was just another pawn in whatever twisted game he was playing. But he had underestimated me. I woke up to find another camera. This one was positioned on the fence, separating my property from Richard's, tilted just enough to capture my entire backyard. My hands clenched into fists as I stared at it. This wasn't just about security. This was about control, about making sure I knew that no matter where I went, he was watching. I forced myself to take a deep breath. Reacting with anger was exactly what he wanted. Instead, I grabbed my phone and started recording. If the police wouldn't do anything, I'd build my own case. That morning, I decided to do some digging. I started knocking on doors, talking to neighbors, trying to gauge what they thought about Richard. The reactions were mixed. Some people hesitated, glancing toward his house like they were afraid to say too much. Others gave vague answers, claiming they didn't know him well. But one elderly man, Mr. Henderson, finally gave me something useful. "You're not the first," he said, lowering his voice. "I've seen him do this before. New people move in, and suddenly they're the problem. He makes their lives hell until they leave." I frowned. "And nobody does anything?" Mr. Henderson sighed. "We're all just trying to get by. And Richard, he's careful. Always just towing the line of what's legal." That lined up with what I had already seen. The cameras, the posts, the subtle manipulations. He knew exactly what he was doing. That night, I installed my own cameras. I wasn't going to let him control the narrative. If he wanted a war of surveillance, I'd give him one. I positioned them carefully, one facing my front yard, another catching the backyard, and a third discreetly pointing toward his property. I wasn't stupid enough to aim them at his windows, but I wanted them to catch any movement near my house. The next morning, Richard was already waiting for me. He stood at the edge of his driveway, arms crossed, smirking. "Bit paranoid, aren't we?" I met his gaze evenly. "Just keeping an eye on things, for security." He chuckled. "Smart. But I'd be careful if I were you. People around here don't like feeling watched." I clenched my jaw, but I didn't respond. He was baiting me, trying to get a rise out of me so he could spin it into another story. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. That evening, I received an email. No sender, no subject, just a single video attachment. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was surveillance footage, my own footage, but edited. He had taken clips of me pacing in my backyard, standing by my cameras, adjusting them. But the way it was cut together made me look erratic, unstable, even dangerous. Bile rose in my throat. He was setting me up. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a notification from the neighborhood group. A new post. My stomach sank as I read it. "Concerning behavior at 117 Oak Street, we should all be careful." The comments were already flooding in. I knew something was off about that guy. I've seen him creeping around at night. "Should we report this?" I gritted my teeth. He wasn't just trying to harass me. He was turning the entire neighborhood against me. By the time I stepped outside the next morning, I felt the difference. The air was thick with suspicion. A woman jogging by quickened her pace when she saw me. A man watering his lawn barely nodded in acknowledgement. Even the friendly old couple down the street avoided my gaze. And then the police showed up. 2 officers, different from the last time, stood at my door. "Sir, we received another complaint." People are worried. I forced a smile. Worried about what? One of them pulled out a notepad. There have been reports of unusual behavior, suspicious activity at odd hours. My hands curled into fists. Unusual behavior? You mean checking my own security cameras after someone installed 4 pointed at my house? The officers exchanged glances. We just need to ask a few questions. I let them in, knowing full well Richard would be watching, enjoying every second of it. They walked through my house, took notes, asked me pointless questions. Did I have any conflicts with neighbors? Had I been feeling stressed? Was I taking care of my mental health? I wanted to scream, but I knew that would only play into Richard's hands. By the time they left, I felt like a suspect in my own home. I stepped outside and found Richard standing there, sipping his coffee, watching. He didn't say a word. He just smiled. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just harassment. It was a game. A sick, twisted game that he had played before, and if I didn't find a way to stop it, I'd lose everything. I wasn't about to let that happen. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the blinking red light of Richard's cameras. Every sound outside made my pulse spike. He had turned my own home into a prison, and the worst part was, I couldn't even fight back without making things worse. I needed a new strategy. Reacting wasn't working. I had to be smarter. By morning, I had a plan. If Richard wanted to play dirty, I was going to beat him at his own game. First, I needed evidence. Real, undeniable proof that he was harassing me, manipulating the neighborhood, and orchestrating this entire campaign against me. I spent hours reviewing the footage from my own cameras, but Richard was careful. He never stepped foot on my property, never did anything that could be considered outright illegal. But I knew there had to be something. Then I noticed something strange. Late at night, Richard would disappear from his porch, his camera still rolling, but he himself would be gone for hours. I decided to follow him. It was risky, but at this point, what did I have to lose? At around 1 a.m., he left his house. He walked calmly down the street, past my house, past the cul-de-sac, until he disappeared into the woods behind our neighborhood. I hesitated for only a moment before grabbing a jacket and following him. I kept my distance, staying in the shadows, my heart pounding so hard I was afraid he'd hear it. The woods were silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves. Then I saw it, a small clearing where Richard had set up a hidden workstation. A laptop, cables, a portable generator. What the hell was he doing? I crouched low and watched as he tapped on his keyboard, staring at multiple monitors that displayed camera feeds. Not just his own, but other people's houses. He wasn't just spying on me. He was watching everyone. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't about me. This was bigger. He had an entire network of surveillance and nobody knew. My fingers itched to pull out my phone, to record everything, but the risk was too high. If he caught me here, alone in the dark, who knew what he'd do? I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound, and retraced my steps home. My mind was racing. I had to expose him. But how? Going to the police was useless. If I didn't have ironclad proof, they'd brush me off again. And worse, if Richard found out I had discovered his secret, I had no doubt he'd escalate his campaign against me. The next day, I acted like nothing had happened. I waved to neighbors, went about my routine, and made sure Richard saw me doing it. I needed him to think I was defeated, that he had won. But behind the scenes, I was preparing for war. I started with the neighborhood Facebook group. I crafted a post carefully, not accusing Richard outright, but planting seeds of doubt. Anyone else notice strange things happening lately? Unfamiliar cars driving slowly through the neighborhood? Cameras popping up in unexpected places? Just curious if it's only me. The responses trickled in slowly at first. Then more people started sharing their own experiences. A woman mentioned her motion lights going off at odd hours. A man said his security system had been tampered with. A few people even admitted they'd felt uneasy but had dismissed it. I kept the conversation going, subtly guiding it toward Richard without ever saying his name. That night, I saw him watching me from his porch. His smirk was gone. He knew what I was doing. The next morning, my mailbox was smashed in. I stood there, staring at the wreckage, my hands tightening into fists. This was his warning. He couldn't attack me directly, so he went for intimidation. But that meant he was getting nervous. I went inside and checked my cameras. They had caught nothing. He knew exactly where their blind spots were. Of course he did. But he didn't know about my hidden cameras, the ones I had installed inside my house, the ones that recorded my street from behind the glass of my windows. I replayed the footage, and there he was, Richard, in the middle of the night, walking up to my mailbox with a metal bat. He took his time, smashing it to pieces, then calmly walking back to his house. Gotcha. I copied the footage onto a flash drive and uploaded it to a secure cloud. This was the proof I needed. Not just hearsay, not just paranoia, cold, hard evidence. Now I just had to decide what to do with it. I could go straight to the police, but they had ignored me before. Would this be enough for them to act? Maybe. Maybe not. I needed something bigger. I needed the whole neighborhood to see him for what he really was. So I took a risk. I sent the footage to the Facebook group anonymously. No context, no explanation. Just the video of Richard, in the dead of night, destroying my property. The reaction was immediate. People were horrified. The comment section exploded with outrage. "This is insane! I can't believe this! Who else has had problems with him?" More stories started coming out. People who had been too scared or embarrassed to say anything finally spoke up. Richard had been terrorizing people for years. Then someone did the one thing I hadn't expected. They called the local news. By the end of the day, a reporter was in the neighborhood asking questions. Richard had been careful, but he wasn't ready for this. He had always operated in the shadows, manipulating people behind the scenes. He wasn't prepared to be dragged into the light. That night, for the first time, his cameras went dark. The silence was deafening. He knew he had lost control. But I wasn't stupid. A man like Richard didn't just give up. He was waiting, planning his next move, and I had to be ready. The neighborhood was buzzing. The video had spread faster than I expected, and for the first time, Richard wasn't in control of the narrative. People were talking, asking questions, and most importantly, they were no longer looking at me like I was the problem. They were looking at him. I had exposed him, but I knew it wasn't over. A man like Richard didn't just slink away in shame. He was calculating his next move, and I had to be ready. For the next few days, he stayed quiet. No more Facebook posts, no more smug glances from his porch. Even his cameras, which had been a permanent fixture for weeks, were suddenly switched off. That silence should have been a relief, but instead, it put me on edge. Then the letters started appearing. The first one was tucked under my windshield wiper, just a folded piece of paper with a single sentence scrawled in uneven handwriting. "You think this is over?" The second one was slipped under my front door. "You don't know who you're dealing with." By the third, I stopped waiting to find them. I started checking my property every morning, searching for whatever new threat he had decided to leave for me. But he was careful. He never stepped onto my land, never did anything I could prove. He was taunting me, reminding me that he was still here, still watching. I didn't sleep much. Every noise outside had me sitting up in bed, heart pounding. I kept the lights off, watching through the curtains, waiting to catch him in the act. But he never showed himself. Then, one night, my power went out. It wasn't a neighborhood outage. The houses around me still glowed with porch lights and flickering TVs. It was just my house. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside to check the breaker box. The second I stepped off my porch, I felt it. That prickling sensation on the back of my neck. The unmistakable feeling of being watched. I turned slowly, scanning the shadows, but everything was still, too still. Then I heard it, a soft click. The unmistakable sound of a camera shutter. I didn't think. I ran. Toward the sound, toward the darkness, toward whatever he had planned. I reached the side of my house just in time to see a figure disappear into the trees. I chased after him, branches snapping under my feet, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly. My lungs burned, my heart hammered, but I didn't stop. Then I found it, a small, black box mounted to the back of my shed. A motion-activated camera, hidden where I never would have noticed. And beneath it, half buried in the dirt, a pile of old security footage tapes. I stared at them, my mind racing. Why would he leave these here? Why now? Then it hit me. This wasn't his mistake. It was a message, a challenge. I took the tapes inside, locking every door behind me. My hands shook as I fed one into an old camcorder, pressing play. The footage was grainy, black and white. It took me a moment to realize what I was looking at. A house. Not mine. Someone else's. The angle was high, looking down into a backyard. Then I saw him. Richard, standing just out of sight, watching someone through their window. My stomach turned. Tape after tape, it was the same. Different houses, different people, but always the same thing. Richard watching, Richard waiting. I had always thought he was targeting me specifically, that I had done something to provoke him, but this was bigger. He had been doing this for years. The next morning, I went straight to the police. I handed over the tapes, explaining everything. The harassment, the letters, the power outage, the camera I had found. The officer listened, nodding along, but there was something in his eyes, something hesitant. "We'll look into it," he said. "That's it?" I snapped. "This is proof. What else do you need?" He sighed. "We'll need to verify where these tapes came from. We can't just take them at face value." I ran a hand through my hair. Meanwhile, he's still out there, still watching. The officer hesitated, then leaned in slightly. "Between you and me? Keep your head down. This guy, he's got friends in the system." My stomach dropped. "You mean—" "Just be careful," he said, then stood, signaling the conversation was over. I walked out of the station, heart pounding. Richard had connections. That explained why he had gotten away with this for so long. Why nobody had stopped him before. But this time it was different. This time I wasn't going to back down. I knew Richard wouldn't let things end like this. The silence after my visit to the police station was suffocating, thick with tension. The kind that made my skin crawl. He was planning something. I could feel it. I didn't wait to find out what. I reinforced my cameras, repositioned them to catch every possible angle. I double-checked my locks, reinforced my doors, even slept with a baseball bat beside my bed. It was exhausting, living like this. But I refused to let my guard down. Not now. Not when I was this close. Then one night, everything escalated. A crash outside snapped me awake. My heart pounded as I grabbed the bat and crept toward the front door. Through the peephole, I saw movement, just a shadow slipping between the houses. My stomach turned to ice. I stepped outside, my grip tightening around the bat. My eyes scanned the darkness, searching. Then I saw it. Red spray paint smeared across my garage door. "Leave or regret it." The letters dripped, fresh and bold, a warning, a promise. My pulse hammered. I spun around, scanning the street, but it was empty, silent. He was here. He had been watching. I turned back inside and locked every door. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. This was a declaration of war. He wasn't trying to intimidate me anymore. He was making his final move. I called the police again, but I already knew what would happen. They arrived, took a statement, and left without any real action. "We'll file a report," they said. "Let us know if anything else happens." If anything else happens, that was it. I was done waiting, done playing defense. If the system wasn't going to stop him, I would. I spent the next day going through every piece of evidence I had collected. Videos, screenshots, the letters, the footage of him destroying my mailbox. It was a mountain of proof, but it still wasn't enough. I needed something bigger, something undeniable. Then I remembered the tapes. I had given a few to the police, but I still had more. Late that night, I started going through them, one by one. The grainy black and white footage showed what I already knew. Richard, watching people, tracking their movements. But then I found something new, a face I recognized, a cop. My blood went cold. The video showed a quiet exchange between Richard and an officer I had seen before, the one who had dismissed my complaints so easily. They stood in the shadows, talking, Richard handing him something small. Money? A flash drive? I couldn't tell, but it was enough. I had him. By morning, the neighborhood was buzzing again. I uploaded the footage, sent it to local news stations, even reached out to a journalist I had spoken to before. The response was immediate. People were horrified. The fact that Richard had been spying on the entire neighborhood was bad enough, but corrupt cops protecting him? That was bigger than anyone had expected. Then the most unexpected thing happened. People started fighting back. More neighbors came forward with their own stories, their own proof. Someone had a recording of Richard threatening them. Another had footage of him trespassing. Piece by piece, his empire of control unraveled. The police couldn't ignore it anymore, not when the public was watching, demanding action. That night, I watched from my porch as squad cars pulled up in front of Richard's house. Officers knocked on his door. A long pause. Then the door opened. He was calm, too calm. He stepped out, hands in his pockets, smiling like he had already won. But then they cuffed him, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. They took him away, and the street erupted into whispers, neighbors gathering in small groups, processing what had just happened. I didn't join them. I just stood there watching, finally free of his shadow. A few days later, I learned he wasn't coming back. The charges were serious: harassment, illegal surveillance, even some financial crimes tied to his connections in the force. He had been playing this game for years, and now he had finally lost. I repainted my garage door, took down some of my cameras. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. One evening, as I sat on my porch, sipping a beer, I noticed something. The house next to Richard's, now empty, had a "for sale" sign out front. A family toured it that afternoon, a young couple with a little girl. They laughed as they walked the yard, completely unaware of what had happened here. A fresh start. I hoped they'd never meet him. But if they did, at least now, the world knew exactly who he was.